Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about Chapter 5, which is on HR planning and recruitment. Again, a topic that I really love. Chapters 5 and 6 together. Early when I first got into HR, 15, 16 years ago, my first several years of my career were spent in kind of planning recruitment and advertising and interviewing people, selecting people for jobs, helping with job descriptions, helping with promotions, things like that. And I think a lot of HR professionals kind of get their start in recruitment because again, it's fun, it's exciting. You get to sometimes you get to travel, you get to go to job fairs, and you get to talk to people on the phone, interview them, and excite them about your organization. So a lot of people who, especially people who have been in HR a long time, if you ask a lot of them will tell you that they got into HR through recruitment and through that kind of panel. And it's still arguably the most popular area of HR because again, it's the fun part of the organization. It's bringing people in, it's orientating them, it's things like that. Chapter 5 in your textbook does kind of split it into two sections, the HR planning process and the HR recruitment process. And as far as the planning process goes, you'll read about things like forecasting labor. One of the things that recruitment managers and HR managers and directors do is try to figure out the labor market itself. So in any organization, what is the proper way to look at your workforce? Do you need all full times? Can you fill some positions with part-time employees? And what happens when you need maybe temporary employees? A lot of retail stores during like the holiday season will employ a lot of temporary workers because they don't need to employ full-time workers because of the kind of the seasonal rush of things. So forecasting labor and really looking at ways that you can figure out the ideal size of your workplace, that's kind of the first step that you have to take before you advertise and you start doing interviews and things along those lines. You kind of have to figure out what's the ideal labor size, and the first part of chapter 5 in the HR planning process is all about learning about that. And unfortunately, there are times where maybe you have to downsize, and maybe especially, like after the holidays, for example, when, you beef up your labor force to get through Black Friday and the Christmas season. And then maybe in January, February, maybe, you don't need as much help anymore. So you start to downsize the argument. And HR managers, that's part of what their job is to do, is to look at those forecasting trends specifically. And your chapter 5 does a good job of kind of talking about those two types of things. And then another thing to look at is, okay, sometimes it may be hard to bring in people to work. Where can you find alternative sources of employment? I can share a quick story with you. When I was in Louisiana many years ago, still in the casino industry, we were hiring a lot of people for this really big resort casino down there. Well, there was a lot of positions that we were really struggling with. We couldn't find a lot of people for kind of more frontline positions like housekeepers and cashiers and laundry room attendants and banquet people. So a lot of those positions we outsourced. We found we had a company who would bring in people from all over the U.S. and even other parts of the world who would work in kind of temporary fashions in that area. And that kind of got us into the immigration piece, which your book also talks about. And I remember specifically, that there was a certain type of visa that we used. It was called an H-1B, and I think your book actually discusses it. And we were able to bring in a lot of individuals from Jamaica because, southern Louisiana and Jamaica aren't really that far from each other geographically. So we brought in a lot of Jamaican individuals who came and worked for us for an extended period of time because, again, they got great, overseas experience, and it helped fill a need for the organization. So, again, but that was a lot of creative thinking that went into how do we plan our workforce and how do we look at the things on what makes us successful. So that's kind of the first thing that chapter 5 talks about, is that planning process. And then the rest of the chapter really goes into what I consider to be the fun part of HR, which is the recruitment and figuring out what are the best ways to get people into your organization, whether that's print advertising, whether it's social media, whether using colleges and universities for job fairs. There's really a multitude of things like that. And make sure you really read through those recruitment different areas of it, because this week's one of the assignments this week will actually ask you to critique some of those areas. Again, I've been in higher ed since 2013, so I'm really biased. But obviously, my favorite way to use is like college job fairs and things along those lines. For new hires and new graduates of colleges are always the most excited to get in the workplace. So a lot of times I found some of my best hires there, but a lot of times a simple social media campaign or sometimes even word of mouth is the easiest way to get people into your organization. So obviously, think about back, 30, 40, 50 years when if you wanted to post a job, you kind of had to post it in the newspaper, or there were very few ways you could recruit. Nowadays, things like LinkedIn and Indeed.com are all just plethoras of examples of different ways we can recruit. So make sure you read through those details. And again, the assignments this week kind of talk about the recruitment side of things. So that's kind of chapter 5 in a nutshell. Again, make sure you read through it, all those details. Again, I think it's important, especially not just learning about the recruitment aspect, but again, the planning process that goes into your organization before you can start recruiting. So that's all for chapter 5. And again, we'll lead this right into chapter 6.